So welcome everybody to this afternoon's webinar. We've got a great webinar ahead for you. We've partnered with a couple of good organisations with similar philosophies, so I think we're going to have fun for this afternoon's webinar. I'll introduce myself first before moving to talk on the panellists and what we're going to be talking about on the webinar today. So my name is Sarah Corley. I'm DFI's community manager, and it's my job to bring to our alumni and our community different learning opportunities such as webinars and meeting in face-to-face in different locations where coronavirus will allow us to do so, and also offering different ways in which we can engage together as a community. So I'm very excited about today's webinar, which is on the subject of providing financial services to refugees during this difficult time that is coronavirus. We're very lucky that today we've joined 3 organisations together, plus also guest panellists from other organisations as well. So DFI, who some of you will know, our main focus is providing capacity building to those working in the financial sector in order to increase really in skills and knowledge around digital finance and financial inclusion. And we're delighted to have partnered with PHP Development and Opportunity International today. So PHP is a collective of digital catalyzers who push boundaries to create a world in which all men and women can improve their livelihood through digital means. And they're very, very focused on impact and making viable financial services. Opportunity International is a non-profit that is working to end global poverty by creating and sustaining jobs through a network of program partners. Opportunity provides small business loans, savings, insurance and trading to more than 14 million people in the developing world. We believe that this trio of people or organisations today will make a really fascinating webinar for us to really begin to unpick what can happen and what is happening. And for me, this is what's really exciting. It's not a theory today. We've also got some really great examples of what is actually happening being shared with you today. I'm going to leave you now with just a couple more thoughts. Firstly, just to remind you that we are recording this webinar and we will be sharing the recording with you probably on Monday, given we're already on Friday afternoon. So if you do have to drop off the call or you enjoyed it a lot, you want to share it with a colleague, you will be able to do so. And also, if you want to ask any questions to any of the panelists, please, if you put your mouse towards the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little Q&A box pop up and you can type your questions in there. And we'll get through them as much as we can while we're going through the webinar. So now I'm going to hand over to our moderator for today's session, and that's Peter Sparrowboom. She's in charge of the PHP Academy and their coaching and training practice. She started working financial inclusion 25 years ago in Southern Africa and has since worked all over East and West Africa. So I think we're going to be in good hands with our moderator this afternoon. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you very much to DFI for hosting this webinar. Welcome to all the listeners. We're going to be talking, as Sarah has said, about financial services to refugees in this new COVID situation, and in particular under lockdown, as it is being lived or has been lived in Uganda. Oops. Yeah. Here you are. Right. This is the panel that we have today. I'm not sure where it's, where we're remote. We're doing this remotely, clicking remotely, and apparently that gives some technical problems. So we try it again. No, one back. Here we are. Good. Very good. So first I wanted to introduce Noah Semapia, who's the refugee coordinator for Opportunity International based in Uganda. So he has a master's in refugee protection and forced migration, and he also has a bachelor's in adult education and community development. Very happy to have you with us today, Noah. Then our second panelist is Chris Colima. So Chris is the manager of Mobansako in the Naki Valley refugee settlement in Uganda. Chris himself is a refugee from North Kivu province in DRC, and he came to Uganda in 2006. He's married and he has 3 children. He was also involved when this Moban Sacco was founded in 2008 with the help of UNHCR and the Office of the Prime Minister. You will hear more about the Office of the Prime Minister, OPM, because that is the department in Uganda that's responsible for refugees. Okay, our third panelist is Hannington Tenge, who's Business Research and Development Manager at Ugafod Microfinance. Hannington, before he worked with Ugafode, has worked with a number of other financial institutions, Finca in Uganda and Tanzania, Ecobank in Uganda, and KCB also. So he initiated Ugafode's project to start serving refugees, and it was under his responsibility that a first branch was opened in the Nakivale refugee settlement in March this year. And then we have Jane Mugangi, who is the Manager Strategic Partnerships and Corporate Sales at MTN Uganda. She started at MTN 18 years ago as the Business Services Advisor. I'm sorry, that's not correct. The Customer Service Advisor, that's right. And then she climbed up the ranks to make it to this position. So she has championed a number of financial inclusion projects within the MTN that have been funded by UNCDF, by GSMA, by Financial Sector Deepening Uganda, and also by MasterCard. And Jane has visited all the different refugee settlements in Uganda. I'm very pleased to have this very distinguished panel here with us. So the structure of today's session is as described on this slide. We just went through the introduction, and this will be followed by a presentation of the context of refugees in Uganda, and Noah will give that presentation. Then there will be three very short presentations by the financial service providers that I just introduced, all three of which are serving refugees. After that, we'll have a little bit of discussion in the panel, and we'll have a discussion with you, our listeners. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So I'm handing over now to Noah for his presentation of the context. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. It's I'm privileged to have a chance to share this experience with you this afternoon. As I've been introduced, I work with Opportunity International, and I'm really happy to participate in this webinar. Now, to start off, Uganda hosts over 1.4 million refugees, and these are settled in across 11 settlements. And the country boasts of a progressive refugee policy where refugees are given a piece of land, they're allowed to freely move and have access to employment. Now, our current work as Opportunity International is in Nakiva refugee settlement down southwest, and then Ramwanja and Kliandongo somewhere in the middle west. All right. So I've been in charge of a refugee project. I'm trying to move my slides. So there have been interesting changes in the refugee work in Uganda. Oops, sorry. Sorry about that. Hey, colleague, can you resume slideshow? Sorry about that. Yeah, so there have been interesting changes in refugee programming in Uganda over the recent months. For example, in April this year, World Food Programme announced cuts in refugee food and rations by 30%. This not attributed to COVID-19. It was announced it was mentioned to us before that, and it's attributed to lack of financial resources by World Food Programme. But on the other side, the goal of the Office of the Prime Minister in charge of refugees is to have over 18% refugees on bank accounts, and this definitely poses a really very huge challenge to financial institutions and NGOs that are working with refugees in Uganda. So I've had chance to oversee a refugee finance inclusion project in Uganda that's aimed at creating refugee self-reliance through delivering financial services, leveraging digital channels. And as part of the project's approach, we do use financial diaries to study the financial behaviors and livelihoods of refugees over time. This helps us to develop financial products and services for refugees that are specific to refugee needs. Now, a financial diaries could be a new word to you, to most of you, a new terminology, but these are basically interviews conducted frequently and involve asking same questions to same respondents by the same researcher over a given period of time. Our diaries are running for up to around 55 weeks, and we have up to 200 respondents that we talk to in Nakivale and Kiryandongo refugee settlement. Now, the respondents are asked about their incomes, their savings, expenditures, financial plans, the feeding patterns, daily lives, and stuff like that. And the people that interview them are trained researchers who are hired from among the refugees because they know the language, they know the context of the settlement, and they can easily get us accurate information. Now, as a result of the outbreak of COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdown in Uganda, we updated our diary questions to ask respondents about how their lives have changed as a result of COVID-19. And in the slides that I'll present to you, I'll take you through some of the findings that we have when we compare data weeks before lockdown and weeks after lockdown. Now, the interviews for the financial diaries are conducted bi-weekly, and the lockdown started at bi-weekly 13. Well, let's try to look at the data. Now, one thing we wanted to measure is the impact of lockdown on incomes, both business and employment. Now, at baseline, we learned that over 20% of our respondents earn their income through casual employment. So as you can see at bi-weekly 13, weekly 13 and 14, when the lockdown started, there was a drastic kind of a change or drop in the incomes for the refugees that were earning through casual laborers by almost 56%. But this not only affected incomes, So the lockdown not only affected incomes from casual laborers, but also affected incomes from business. When you look at bi-weekly 13, when they announced the lockdown in Uganda, you can see that the incomes from our respondents who are running small businesses dropped really hard. Now, the gentleman you see in the salon, he does a salon business and is one of our respondents. he informed us that after lockdown, he couldn't have, he didn't have customers because salons had been closed and people were not moving. But he resorted to, doing his business secretly. He would just get a client, lock him inside his salon, work on them, and then open and they move out. But with time, of course, the authorities stopped him. So he had to think of new ways of doing his business. So he now moves house to house, helping, trimming people's hair. But of course, it's hard for him because, some households, actually many households in the settlement do not have electricity. So he cannot earn as much as was earning before the lockdown. Now, just my last two slides, we also wanted to measure impact on the savings. When you look at bi-weekly 13 and 14, the savings dropped. So 86% of our respondents indicated that we were saving, but when they announced the lockdown, they stopped saving. And this explains exactly why, when you look at the next graph of savings withdrawn, at bi-weekly 14 and 15, you see a rise in the withdrawals as the savings are dropping. So probably we talked to the respondents as to why they couldn't save and they were withdrawing. They were like, oh, you know what, we wanted to have money to, to stock food and things like that at home. And this really is affecting financial institutions, as you hear in the subsequent slides. Yeah, so thank you so much. I just want to say that with this data and much data that we have through our diaries, we are able to design appropriate products for refugees and understand, their pain points and always ensure that we get these addressed. And of course, what we do offer necessary education to enable them cope and stay resilient and have really interesting livelihoods. And we are so grateful for all the support that we've gotten through our partners and everyone. So thanks so much for listening. I'll hand over to Pet. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Okay, Sarah, can you show the two slides where I can introduce the other speakers? Good, and I'll let you, yeah, it's the next one. That one, exactly, good. So we have three financial service providers here. We have MTN, Yugafod, and Moban Sacco. They're very different financial service providers, and of course we did that on purpose because that makes it more interesting. So MTN got licensed in 1998 in Uganda. They have 8.4 million people registered on the mobile money platform. They offer a number of mobile money services, also they offer. They have 65,000 service points. They have 50 agents and 40 super agents in Nakivale refugee settlement. That information just came in. It's not yet on the slide. But as you can see, they're also active in the refugee settlements. Then we have Yugafod, a microfinance institution. Started as an NGO, became a micro deposit-taking institution in 2011. 17,000 borrowers, 2,200 refugee accounts. Okay, and then they have a range of services, both traditional services and mobile services, and they are agents and super agents for mobile money providers, and they offer bank to wallet and wallet to bank transfers. They have 18 branches in the country, one in Nakivale refugee settlement. And then there's Moban Sacco. As I said earlier, it was established in 2008. It already has almost 4,000 members, not only refugees, also nationals. So as usual in a savings and credit cooperative, every member has a share. And then there are various savings products, quite a range of savings products, and quite a range of individual and group loans. And they are an agent for several banks. They have one office in Nakivale refugee settlement. So that's a much smaller organization. I'd like to see the next slide as well, please. Just to make that visual. So here on the left, you see where Mobansako is located in the south of Uganda, towards the border there. Ugafode has its 18 branches, including Nakivale, and planning to go to Rwanda, sorry, and then MTN. This shows mobile network coverage, which of course is essential for mobile money coverage. It doesn't show exactly mobile money coverage, but you can see that there is relatively good mobile network coverage in Nakivale, in and around Nakivale, which makes it possible to offer their services in that refugee settlement. MTN has made a special effort to make sure that refugees have actually network coverage. Okay, so I'd like to hand over to Jane at this point to present to us how MTN has been experiencing the lockdown, and also what its challenges have been. Some of the challenges, obviously, they've managed to solve, and some challenges are still to be solved. Over to you, Jane.
Open your mic, Jane.
Thank you, Pete, for that introduction. Thank you so much. So basically, like all other, like the previous presenter, we're speaking about how COVID-19 has impacted our activities in the refugee settlements. We are available in northern Uganda, but we are also available in western Uganda. So in northern Uganda, we have 400 agents, and in western Uganda, specifically to Nakivale, we have 51 agents. But in total, the number of mobile money agents countrywide are 100,000. So when you look at the before COVID-19 on your left in my picture, you're able to see that there is so much activity going on. There is a face-to-face interaction. People are able to talk to each other, and definitely more refugees or more people in these pictures on the left. And if you see the picture on the right, it clearly shows the impact, especially associated with the distancing of 1 meter apart, and people reluctantly coming to the mobile money agent locations, which definitely reduces the profit or the business case for the mobile money agents in those locations if they are not available there. And it also shows a decline in the economic activity of the refugee settlement, which should actually be directly affecting the mobile money transactions of both the agent and the business at large. So, I'm failing to move my slide though. I'm failing to move my slide, sorry.
No, I think Sarah needs to do that because Sarah is controlling it.
Okay. Lara, could you kindly support because I've lost my slides?
Don't worry, I'm on the case, and just tell me when you want to click to the next one.
I would like the second slide, please. Thank you. So on the second slide, we talk about the general challenges of distribution in the refugee settlements, but also what we have done to address these challenges within our means and given the circumstances available. The main challenge is liquidity, which is the availability of float and cash. So when you're working with refugees, because there are people who are involuntarily displaced, they're normally looking at what they can keep and what they can use. So the availability of float and cash is very important for adoption because they need to know that they will not be able to be held back on their expenditure if they have money on the phone and they cannot cash it out. So that is one of the areas where we address. Then more agent service points. So if you look at the first slide that I spoke about, I talked about the agent availability in the refugee settlements. So because these are settlements, we try as much as possible to recruit the people within the community so that there is not much migration, especially after COVID, because there's limited movement as well. So we've also taken advantage of refugees themselves that would like to be agents or have a small amount of money that they can invest. And we've actually reduced the capital requirement specifically for agents so that they can have a sustainable business that they can run as mobile money agents, and also they have more trust within their existing communities. So another area is also dormancy. By dormancy, I mean the mobile money people or users that at some point they stop to use the services, either because they've lost, they do not have financing anymore, or they do not have proper support. Because remember, mobile money is about adoption. It's a new thing. Some of them are coming from countries where there is no mobile money. So how do we manage them from being dormant or forgetting the product and service? Is we put them in a customer value management database where we continually communicate to them about the new services and how mobile money can change their lives, their daily lives through spending on the mobile money phone. And we also carry out what we call upselling campaigns, that is speaking to them about the new products and services that are available in MTN and how we can help them have connected lives with their families back home, but also maintain a living standard within the country that is normal to them so that they feel comfortable where they are. Third slide, please, Sarah. I think I'm failing to move my slide again. And the last slide, because we are looking at many service providers on this forum, I would like to focus mainly on the two areas that we would like to address in the coming 2 months. One of them is boosting sustainable liquidity. You remember I spoke about liquidity as the available of e-value and cash in either equal proportions or its availability at all times. So in this case, being MTN as an enabler that is looking at providing network, providing an MTN mobile money platform that it has to be put in use. We look for partners and partnerships with different service providers or financial service companies that can come and work with us in terms of liquidity management within the refugee settlements, because we are not a service provider of a financial service, a bank, but we are enabler because we have a platform that is able to enable these transactions to take place. Then the second item is increase agent productivity. How do we increase agent productivity is build the ecosystem within the refugee settlements in such a way that refugees do not depend on receiving money and cashing out, but rather they're able to transact the money that is on their phone by buying goods and services. As you can see in the previous presentation from a fellow panelist called Noah, he talked about one of the barbers doing hair cutting, but that barber is actually receiving cash. How do we facilitate that barber with a mobile money collection code whereby all payments are received digitally and he doesn't have to interact more with cash? We all know that cash in these times of COVID would actually facilitate transmission of COVID because it's gone through so many hands. The other idea is to have innovations. We have an MTN mobile money open API platform whereby financial service providers and fintechs can develop towards the refugee challenges and needs and directly plug into the mobile money platform. So we facilitate that and would like to work with partners so that we make the lives of the refugees as more comfortable and connected as possible. So that comes to the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Jane. That was very good and very interesting. I'd like to invite Chris to give his presentation. If you have any questions for Jane, please write them on the Q&A and we'll get to them after the presentations. So over to you, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think I'm there.
You are. We can see your slide.
Yeah. Now, I'll talk a bit of the effect of the COVID-19 during that period of lockdown. For our program here, we had a big challenge. We have seen a lot of withdrawals of our members, because most of our people are dealing in a day-to-day business activities. Then we have registered most of the withdrawal of their savings during this period. And it has affected a lot on our income. Our loans, we stopped giving out loans, since most of business people, except those who are dealing in food stuff, they are the one who were still in business. So others were stopped by the COVID, not working. But though, as Noah mentioned, of the saloon man, even some bars could open and they still do business inside. But still, with that challenge, we have seen our business sloping down, and our members are very affected with the lockdown. And the impact was very, 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 very great to our business. For even opening accounts, new members, we had a lot of people coming in, and we around 100 people who have opened account with us. And the repayment was a little bit sloping down, though we made effort to check on them. Then I think we can go to the second slide. Yes. During the lockdown, we had a very big challenge. Before the lockdown, we were planning to have a vehicle which can assist us to go to remote place where our members are, and the cash transfers from banks to our circle. But when planning for that, the lockdown came in, and good enough, the government helped us through the OPM. They assist us with a transport means for that business. We have been able to conduct our meetings with small groups of around 4 to 6 people. And mostly we met those who are in business, and those who are not, to know what is their next plan after the COVID. We have been able to meet around 100 groups, and it was very amazed to see and get their response. And we can move to the third slide. Now our remaining challenge is we are planning to buy or at a loan a vehicle for our business, and we are looking for funds through different partners to boost up our members who are in business, and their business is almost like collapsing through this lockdown, the effect of the lockdown. So this is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Very good. Okay, if you have any questions for Chris, please put them on the Q&A. In the meantime, we'll move on to Hannington's presentation. Right, go ahead, Hannington.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll just briefly go through the lockdown and its general effects on our operations on Ugaford. Of course, we are given an introduction, but it's good to emphasize that Ugaford began financial inclusion for refugees in 2019. And of course, with that, we began with the urban front. With COVID-19, all the urban operations stopped. And so they have been on hold since then. For Nachi Valley branch, which we are very lucky to open before COVID-19 had an effect on the country, we began operations officially on 2nd March. then went into lockdown by the end of March. But we're happy to note that we've been able to at least open over 850 accounts, although we didn't reach our target of 1,500. Direct effect on YouGov definitely has been that our relationship officers have been greatly affected. They're not able to go to the field. They're not visiting clients as scheduled. So we resorted to just calling, and the call center has been very influential in this. Of course, for loans, we've been able to disperse some loans, but again, still below target. So operations have been affected and going on a business continuity plan. We've been happy to note that the partners who have been able to come on board, especially under COVID, like Kiva, which does person-to-person lending. Our PAR, especially in Chivari, has remained has remained at zero, both for 1 day and 30 days. That's because we've just been in operation for only 3 months there. Our field teams have been greatly affected. I wish to emphasize that, and major lending has really stopped. Repayments have been affected, but at least we are engaging them, and clients are moving, are able to pay other than they can pay. These are normal clients like you see in the picture. You get barbecue, so if their businesses fail to operate, they can't operating a small shop, just like the picture summarized. My next slide goes a little deep into the major challenges we faced and some solutions we thought through. Key really has been under the new normal. There's now the new language of social distance. Now with our limited space, given the branch setup, the way it appears in the picture in Chivari, we've had to ensure that limited staff come to the branch in order to observe social distance. We've had to think of tents outside the banking area, outside that space in the picture, so that clients can come, sit, wait, get queued. The other key challenge that immediately arose was, this going into the refugee space has always had its perceived risks, and the businesses have been risky segment of clients. They have limited collateral, so having partners like Kiva has been very important for us in providing loan guarantees among us really technical assistance which they provide. Turnaround time has been greatly affected. To put it in context, for the TAT, for any account to be opened, since we are a regulated institution, it has to be verified. And verification would mean getting in touch with the Office of the Prime Minister, who are in charge of a database which is managed by UNHCR. So going through that whole process has slowed down. Relationships really with the Office of the Prime Minister has been the major area where we get a lot of support, though it's still very manual, and we think this process needs to be automated. And diving into my last slide on what we think should be done in the future around this, key is address issues of client onboarding challenges given limited movement under COVID, under the lockdown scenario we've been having. So this we can easily be addressed by exploring remote accounting options. We urgently need to think of digital credit products for the refugee community. There's a slowdown in issues of refugee IDs since most of the government offices were closed, actually all of them, including the Office of the Prime Minister. We noticed the refugee IDs were being issued. Remember, most of the refugees have family attestation in the refugee communities. So we need to think around solutions where structures can be put in place for the KYC, the know your customer, between Office of the Prime Minister, UNHCR, and financial service providers to be done in real time, that we can be able to have the real effects of financial inclusion. We should really explore ways to automate verification processes, and different partners are having a discussion around this, including UNCDF, UNHCR, OPM, and others. This needs to be thought through. We need to find new ways and approaches to implement non-financial services agenda. Financial literacy is very key in order for us to solve this segment, and unless we think of modes on how to train, on how to keep engaging, this remains a very big challenge. Our clients are limited in their movement, leading further to a need to address onboarding challenges. I just want to emphasize a solution needs to be gotten, but to help us implement, in order to help us think through all these solutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hannington, for that introduction. Very good. So I'd like to start with a few questions to the panelists. I think Chris, you had a question to Jane about SIM cards.
Yeah. We were to open up a SIM card mobile money agency of MTN and Airtel, but the company by itself is registered as a Ugandan company. But the authority and the board member are different by nationality. We have refugees and the nationals. Then when I went there, they asked, they said it is impossible since I'm a refugee, the chairman is a refugee, so they cannot open it for us. So that is the question I have for Jane. How can they help us to open up those SIM cards?
Okay, Jane, could you respond to that?
Thank you so much, Noah, for your question. And yes,
it's Christopher.
It was Chris asking you.
Sorry, Christopher. So previously we had challenges around the validation and verification of refugee identification documents. But this has been resolved because what we have done is built a VPN tunnel between ourselves and the UNHCR, whereby as long as a refugee has their ID or their attestation card, which has a clear barcode, which we can read and validate that this refugee is actually a refugee, then we will give a SIM card and register the refugee as well. So this has changed over the years, and over the months, and this only takes 5 minutes for you to get your SIM card registered. What I'll do offline is get your details and make sure you have the support that you need if you have all your documents in place.
Yes, but because my concern was the company is a Ugandan. Is a Ugandan, it's registered by law. So it's not the individual who is registering the SIM card. So they should give it to Moban Sacco since it's a company well registered by the government. I don't see any hindering problem there to not allowing us giving it.
I understand your concern, but because mobile money is a financial service that even when it's under a company that is registered, there has to be an individual that is accountable to that transacting card. So this is where we have to capture the details of the directors, the details of the actual user, as much as we have the documents of company registration. And this is by law and the governing authorities that are responsible for mobile money. So the good thing is we have a solution for you. So it should be something that we can resolve.
Yes, one just to add on that point is when we are coming, most of refugees, when they are looking for any service from the different companies or banks and everything, we go to the office of the commandant, the commandant of the settlement. He gives us a recommendation, he stamps. Then I think for us, when we come, since the company is a Ugandan company, and when we come with a recommendation from the commandant, that could give us that service, isn't it?
Yes, but like I said earlier, because of the individual that is going to transact and is responsible for the PIN, we have to have the details of that individual themselves.
I think there's some important areas for further discussion, but fortunately you know each other now, so you have an open door to discuss it more deeply. Very good. Hennington, I wanted to ask you this. You talked about family attestations as a way to identify. Is that something that really works?
Absolutely. Again, with thanks to hello. With thanks to the major shareholder, the major stakeholders in this market, that's UNHCR, Office of the Prime Minister, they have been able to capture all this data on refugees. So with the Refugee ID and the Genuine Family Attestation Letter, which captures the whole record of the family, but key is to note that there's a unique identifier for each refugee on this family attestation letter, which digitally really we should be able to use and verify and be able to serve these refugees. Because We imagined initially that every refugee in the country, and like it was said earlier, that over 1.4 should have a refugee ID. But we've noticed that over 60% of them don't have this refugee ID. So making use of this family attestation letter will really answer into the financial inclusion space, because the more people we're able to serve, the more people we're able to open accounts. If there's a unique identifier we can work with, it could be an enabler. And that's what we're addressing here.
Very good. I have one more question. I understand that there is a very practical problem of cash transport. And all three of you are engaged in cash transport. Are you all doing that individually, or are you collaborating in that area? So let me ask Chris.
We are doing it individually, since it's a company activity. And like for us, as we are doing with Centenary, Equity, and Opportunity Bank, now, like for example, if you are during the disbursement of cash for food for refugees, we deal with the equity. Now, if our cash goes out and we have more money on our float, we have to go to Mbarara for Equity Bank to supply more cash. We can't go to example to Yugafort, where we don't have an account, and the nature of the business, the transaction we are doing are not fitting the account we have opened to Yugafort. So that leads each bank we deal with, we have to have that kind of transport to meet that need and operate. Yeah.
Well, with the reduction in availability of transport, it becomes more important to look into possibilities to collaborate and to see whether within the actual refugee camps it's possible to let the money go around within the camp instead of having to go to town. I can see some possibilities there. I wanted to ask some questions from the audience. So we have here a question from Mahendra Shahi. COVID-19 caused more savings withdrawal and less loan repayment. So potentially the demand for loan will be higher and the repayment and savings will be lower in the days to come. How are you managing liquidity in this current context? And that's a question to Hannington.
Ask that again, because I can say no.
Okay, so there's more savings withdrawal and less loan repayment now, but maybe there will be more repayment and less and more savings in the future. How are you preparing for that situation?
First of all, it's important to note that the average loan size that we're giving out right now in Ugandan shillings is a maximum of 800,000 for group loans, and that is hardly $500 of a loan. So I'm kind of mentioning here that we're kind of giving small loans, which we can ably manage, which we've well projected for. And like I prudently declared that we have some loan guarantors that have come on board to support us. We're not having a liquidity challenge as yet, because the shareholders, in terms of the other loan funding that we've received, is able to take us through the next 3 years. So we could easily take on any shake-up. And for this kind of space, we're ready for this when we went into it, given the feasibilities and the diagnostic studies that were done in order to support us to go into this space. So I think for now, we are able to take on any shake-up that would hit us.
It's actually easier when there's a lot of demand for loan and a lot of possibility to put loans out, because you have some funds available. Then when there's not so much demand, and when the risks are very high, then it's difficult, like now. But luckily you've got Kiva supporting you. Okay, very good. Jane, you talked about partnerships with financial service providers, in particular with banks in the settlement. What's holding you back in creating those partnerships? What is the issue there?
So the partnerships that we have now with the banks are to manage the float and cash liquidity in the refugee settlements. However, because the banks are in brick and mortar, they're already in premises where somebody has to walk to them to get this float or cash, it becomes a little bit limiting if the agent who is deep in the rural in the refugee settlement has to travel out and go to a bank location. So what I would like to see more with this partnership is how do we manage the remote movement of float and cash between ourselves and the mobile money agents. Currently, the mobile money agent has to go to the bank to exchange their float in order to receive the cash or vice versa. So this is where there is a limitation.
Okay. Any reaction from you, Hannington, on that?
I think she was pretty clear.
Okay, very good. So we'll look at some other questions from the audience. So there's a question to Noah. So the question is from Hosea Katende. How are you interfacing with respondents given these issues of social distancing?
Thank you so much. So, you know, operations had to change. We had to change lots of things about the way we're working after the lockdown and the COVID-19 coming in. So one thing that we did for the respondents was to have the biweekly interviews continue, but being conducted on phone. Definitely that's an extra cost on our side, but also it limits us in getting trying to understand the facial expressions and stuff like that when you're interviewing people face to face, but helps us keep moving and get this very, very important information. And if we didn't do that, definitely I wouldn't have anything to present in this webinar today. So that's what we've been doing. But also for other activities, we do observe the social distancing measures. If we are to meet a group, we make sure that they are no more than 6 people that we are meeting. They are standing. You know, there is space amongst themselves. We have had to put in budget for sanitizers, for masks, although we are waiting for the government to distribute some. So we have had to adjust most of our operations to make sure that we continue serving the people during this situation, but also making sure that they stay healthy and they stay in good health. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. I have a question from Cheryl Frankwich. This is actually to all panelists, but I'm going to pose it to Chris. So this webinar is focused on refugees. No, I can't ask this to Chris because Chris only works with refugees. I'm going to ask it to Hannington. It's focused on refugees, but I'm curious about the extent to which organizations' response to COVID is different in communities with refugees from the response in normal urban rural communities, in other urban or rural communities.
I think our reaction to the refugee sector has been different because for them we are able to accept things which wouldn't easily accept in a normal situation. For example, for any client to get a loan from a regulated institution, they would require collateral. Collateral would be security that you must provide in order to fulfill the basic loan assessment requirements. But for refugees, this has been curtailed down a little bit. For as long as they can guarantee, like Noah said, for as long as they can get a letter from the commandant is like a general leader within a community, you are able to disburse. The requirements are less. I could say they have gone down to say 60% if we required 100%. So these are enablers for them. These are easier ways that we enable them access. Before we began financial inclusion for refugees, there was no refugee who would open an account using a refugee ID. It was not an acceptable KYC document, you know, amongst others, but it's now acceptable.
And another question to you, Hannington. So you managed to get a guarantee from Kiva. Is that something that you negotiated with Kiva, or is this something that Kiva offered to YouGovFood and all its other partners in which it invests in the same way?
This was specifically negotiated with the Kiva for refugee segment. This was specifically negotiated because we are participating with the refugees. And if I don't want to go deep into the Kiva model, but I would say that for refugees, they are willing to do 100% guarantee, where for a national, they would do say 50%, you share the cost, but for a refugee, they would go 100%. So this was very helpful. It gives confidence. It helps everybody appreciate the partners who are willing to support this model. That was negotiated.
It's a solution that you created then for this situation. So that's very good. Okay. Well, we have 2 more minutes. So I would like to know from Chris, have you been able to channel any cash transfers from the government to the refugees?
No, we have never channeled from the government to refugees, but with commercial banks only.
Can I clarify on that, Pet?
Yes, please.
It's important for the audience to know that cash transfers are limited to only 2 banks right now. This is like a tenderized process, and only 2 banks participated so many years ago. We are aware that it will be opened up sooner than later this year. This was mentioned in August, but after COVID, we don't know what will happen under the new normal. So when you must show capacity that you have certain requirements, or if you fulfill certain requirements, in order to do cash transfers with government or with the UN bodies. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to meet certain requirements.
I would like to add something to that. So the cash transfers that we do are with partners that are able to disburse straight to the mobile. So that function is available for MTN as long as the partner is banked. So he's able to buy the e-float from the bank, and then we give them an enabling platform, which is very easy. It's called a bulk disbursement platform. You just list the number of refugees with their numbers, with their names, and it automatically validates the authenticity or the attachment of that number to the name that is given, and the refugee is able to receive the cash straight in their mobile phone at any given time. So however big the database is, it's 1 click and everybody receives the money at the same time.
And you're doing that at the moment?
Yes, we're doing it.
Very good. I think we've gotten to the end of the hour. There's still quite a few questions that have remained unanswered. What we're going to do is we're going to write answers to these questions, and we're going to share with everyone who participated in this webinar. And we're going to also share with you the recording of this webinar. I wanted to give a very big thank you to all the panelists, and also to Sarah from DFI, and to all the listeners who send in their questions, which will really help to improve collaboration between all of us for the benefit of the refugees. Next week is Refugee Week. It's an important time to be talking about refugees and how to solve the extreme problems that are being created by this COVID situation. Thank you very much. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Peter, for moderating such a great session, and thank you, Christopher, Noah, Hannington, and Jane, for sharing your thoughts and your experiences. One thing I think is really great and really stands out for me is that you've had troubles, you've had some issues, but you're finding ways around them, and hopefully collaborating and moving things forward. So it's not about just, wondering what to do, but you've got stuck in and tried to find solutions. And it's also amazing to see such support from the government as well, like the Ugandan Refugee ID being allowed to use for KYC purposes. Many countries around the world are not even there yet. So Uganda, we certainly have a lot to look at when we look towards you, and I think you shared that well with us today. So thank you very much, and thank you to all the attendees who joined us, and we look forward to seeing you on a webinar again soon.